and welcome to another episode of Enchanted Ecosystems. Today we're traveling through the heart of the Brazilian rainforest. As you may know, rainforests are known for their lush plants, variety of animals, and of course, rain. In this episode, we'll be diverging into every aspect of the ecosystem, from the different classes of organisms and plants to the renewable and non-renewable resources that the forest has to offer. We'll see different ways animals have adapted to their surroundings and what it takes for them to survive. At the end of this lesson, we'll even reveal a completed food web of the Brazilian rainforest with 20 different organisms. So who's ready to go on this magical journey, encounter spectacular beasts, and experience wonder like never before? Let's go!
Now, before we dive into the plants and animals, how about a little background information? As we examine different animals, you'll most likely notice that a few different species are very similar in some ways, but have different means as to adapt. This is called natural selection. Natural selection is defined as organisms with favorable variations for a particular environment survive, reproduce, and pass their variations on to the next generation. This is basically saying that when animals reproduce, they pass off their traits that help them survive to their offspring, which often results in adaptation. An adaptation is an adjustment or change in behavior, psychology, and or structure of an organism in order for it to become more suited to an environment. It is very important to know that an individual does not adapt. The whole population in an area has to adapt.
The reason scientists today know about natural selection is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin is most famous for his discovery of evolution and natural selection. In 1831, he embarked on a 5-year voyage across the world as a naturalist on the HMS Beagle. While on the voyage, Darwin took samples of thousands of plant and animal species. In addition, while on this trip, Darwin came across the Galapagos Islands. These islands were where Darwin performed most of his research. He noticed how some birds were similar but had a few differences from the birds a few miles away. After his return, Darwin wrote On the Origin of Species, a book explaining evolution. Also, most people at the time were too religious to accept Darwin's views. Many scientists today credit him with multiple scientific discoveries. So to sum it all up, Charles Darwin's 4 main contributions were discovering natural selection, writing his book explaining evolution, his research gathered while on his 5-year voyage, and his use of the Galapagos Islands.
So as you can see, the rainforest is filled with thousands of living and non-living organisms and is also referred to as abiotic and biotic factors.
An abiotic factor is a non-living substance in an environment such as rocks, dirt, temperature, light, and etc. A biotic factor is a once living organism. Biotic factors can be anything from leaves and vines, ocelets, and toucans.
This Brazilian rainforest ecosystem food web is composed of 20 different biotic organisms. Each organism plays a specific niche in the ecosystem. A niche is an ecological role of organism in a community. Let's take some time to talk about each level of this food web before we display it fully at the end.
The first level of every food web contains producers. A producer is an organism that uses energy from the sunlight to make food through photosynthesis. So basically, producers are plants such as trees, grasses, and berries. The rainforest is home to over 750 types of trees and 1,500 different plant species.
These plants produce their own food through the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process in which plants create food by absorbing sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, and in turn release glucose and oxygen.
So you see, the sun gives energy to the producers, and the producer gives energy to the consumers. A consumer is an organism that obtains energy from other organisms. Now it's time to reveal the producers in the Brazilian rainforest food web. We have the camu, which is the first fruit common in the shrub layer of the rainforest. Next, we have bananas, which are found in the understory. Castor beans, which are found on the forest floor. And finally, kapok trees, which they reach the canopy layer of the rainforest. energy is transferred from one level to another. The level after producers is herbivores.
A herbivore is an animal that only eats plants. The rainforest is filled with hundreds of these animals and insects. Herbivores obtain their energy from the producers. The four herbivores on the Brazilian rainforest food web are capybaras, lacaguduses, leafcutter ants, and scarlet macaws. Leafcutter ants are involved in parasitism, which is under the category of symbiosis.
Symbiosis is the interaction between two different organisms living in close physical association. The four types of symbiosis are predation, mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Parasitism is the relation between two different kinds of organisms in which one receives benefits from the other by causing damage to it.
An example of parasitism in the Brazilian rainforest involves the leafcutter ant and phorid fly. While leafcutter ants are collecting leaves, phorid flies lay their eggs in the crevices of the ants' heads. When the eggs hatch, the young flies feast on the leafcutter ants to obtain nutrients.
Another form of symbiosis is commensalism. Commensalism is a relationship where one organism benefits and the other is not affected.
Sloths, which live in the rainforest, are unaffected side of commensalism. Many species of moths take shelter in sloth fur, which benefits the insects and causes no harm to the sloth. Sloths are also involved in mutualism. Mutualism is a form of symbiosis which is beneficial to the both organisms involved. Sloths move slowly. Algae grow on its fur. In addition, sloth fur absorbs water and contains grooves which serve as a base of algae growth. The algae benefits by having a place to grow, and the sloth benefits from the green tint because it provides camouflage. Sloths are also involved in the last form of symbiosis, predation.
Predation is the preying of one animal on others, which is seen often in the rainforest ecosystem, such as with the harpy eagle and sloth. As you can see, the harpy eagle, which is the predator, swoops down to feast on the sloth, which is the prey.
So far, we have revealed the first two levels of the Brazilian rainforest food web, producers and herbivores. The next level is the omnivores. Omnivores are organisms that eat both plants and animals. The four omnivores on the food web are red-eyed tree frogs, cacomissel, toucans, and blue and gray tanagers.
Another omnivore in the Brazilian rainforest is the poison dart frog, which has adapted in a unique way in order to avoid predators.
Plants and animals have adapted to the environment in many ways. We are going to focus on three: self-defense, camouflage, and mimicry. The poison dart frog uses self-defense through the toxins which seep through its skin. The lipophilic alkaloid toxins ward off predators. Another omnivore, a chameleon, uses camouflage to hide from potential predators. Chameleons are known for their skin, which changes color to match its surroundings. As you can see in this picture, the chameleon's skin has turned green in order to blend in with the leaves. This adaptation enables chameleons to hide from predators in plain sight. Finally, mimicry is seen in the Brazilian rainforest with the owl butterfly. As you can see, this butterfly scares off predators by resembling an owl. The brown patterns and large eye spots which resemble owl eyes cause predators to believe the butterfly is an owl. So the adaptations, self-defense, camouflage, and mimicry help these three animals avoid potential predators in the rainforest.
The fourth level of Brazilian food web is the carnivores. A carnivore is an animal that feeds off flesh. This is basically saying that carnivores only eat other animals, they don't eat plants. There are two types of carnivores, a top-level carnivore and a bottom-level carnivore. Bottom-level carnivores only eat meat, but they themselves are eaten by other carnivores. On the Brazilian rainforest foodweb, the bottom-level carnivores are the orange Amazon tree boa, leaf-mimicking praying mantis, vampire bat, and ocelet, and these are the four. A top-level carnivore is a carnivore that feeds on other organisms but is not fed upon itself. The two top-level carnivores in the Brazilian rainforest foodweb are the harpy eagle and the jaguar. And these are the two. Harpy eagle and the jaguar. These two carnivores prey on many different animals, but they don't have predators themselves.
Another top-level carnivore in the Brazilian rainforest is the anaconda. Now, an anaconda is a type of snake, and snakes tend to have vestigial structures. A vestigial structure is a body structure that is reduced in function in a living organism but may have been used in an ancestor. This helps support Darwin's theory of evolution. If an organism has a body part that they don't use, it must have had used it at one point. But when their ancestors adapted to the environment, the body part did not have a use anymore.
As you can see in this picture, snakes have a vestigial organ, pelvis remnants. Two small pelvic spurs can be seen protruding out of snakes, as you can see in this picture. In addition, snakes have small hind leg bones. Obviously, these bones are not used to snakes anymore, but they do support the theory that at one point snakes may have had limbs.
The very last elements on the food web are the decomposers and scavengers. On the Brazilian rainforest food web, the decomposer is the vermilion wax-cap mushroom. A decomposer is an organism that breaks down the cells of dead plants and animals into similar substances, which are then absorbed into the earth as nutrients. And finally, for scavengers, we have the king vulture. A scavenger, which is also referred to as a detritivore, is an organism that feeds on and breaks down dead plant or animal matter, returning nutrients to the ecosystem. Both decomposers and scavengers help to break down the bodies of organisms. When the nutrients from the animals are returned to the ecosystem, it is given to producers and the food web begins again.
So that completes our food web. As you can see, the rainforest is filled with multiple animals, but some species are becoming endangered and extinct. One of many of these species in the rainforest is a harpy eagle. An endangered species is a species whose numbers are so small that the species is at risk of extinction. Harpy eagles are becoming extinct due to habitat loss, and they are also hunted in large numbers by humans. These top-level carnivores are highly at risk of becoming extinct. Extinct is death of an entire species. One species in the rainforest that has become extinct is the glaucous macaw. This bird population was wiped out due to habitat loss.
Another reason plants and animals are becoming endangered and extinct is the introduction of invasive species. An invasive species is a non-native organism to the ecosystem whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm. One of the many invasive species in the Brazilian rainforest is the wild boar. The wild boar originated from northern Europe and Asia. Over time, the species was introduced to other parts of the world, such as America, Australia, and multiple rainforests. Wild boars threaten many of the native plants and animals. In addition, these pigs transmit diseases to the indigenous species, which have not yet built an immunity. These diseases kill off multiple plants and animals throughout the rainforest.
Another threat to the Brazilian rainforest is the misuse of natural resources. The rainforest is filled with non-renewable and renewable resources. Non-renewable resources are natural resources from the earth that exist in limited supply and cannot be replaced if they are used up. 2. Non-renewable resources in the rainforest are oil and natural gas.
As you can see, oil drilling has begun to take place in large areas of the rainforest. In addition, gas fields have been created to gather natural gas. There have been many gas spills due to this, and multiple natives have died due to close exposure.
Both natural gas and oil are non-renewable resources, and the extraction of these harm the environment, and they are being taken out of the rainforest at an alarmingly quick rate.
The Brazilian rainforest is full of renewable resources as well. Renewable resources are any natural resources that can be replenished naturally with the passage of time. Two renewable resources in the Brazilian rainforest are trees and light. Solar energy from the rainforest has become a popular way of harnessing energy. Because the Brazilian rainforest is so close to the equator, it receives an enormous amount of sunlight all year round. In fact, multiple solar panels, such as the one shown here, have been placed throughout the rainforest to harness energy from the sun. The other renewable resource in the rainforest is trees. There are hundreds of different tree species in the rainforest, and because trees can be replanted, they are considered renewable. However, trees in the rainforest are being cut down at an enormously high rate.
The Brazilian rainforest has been largely impacted by humans positively and negatively. Negatively, deforestation. At the current rate of deforestation, the world's rainforest could disappear in 100 years. Trees in the rainforest are being cut down for multiple reasons. One of the major reasons for deforestation is agriculture. Many people are cutting down trees in order to farm in the land. In addition, logging companies cut down the trees in order to provide most of the world's paper and wood products.
Furthermore, deforestation has drastic changes on the rainforest environment. Removing the trees takes away the shade of the canopy layer. These are the 4 layers. The third layer is the canopy layer, as you can see. And this causes fluctuations in the temperature, which is harmful to the plants and animals. In addition, hundreds of animals are becoming endangered and even extinct due to the loss of habitat, as was the cause of the harpy eagle and the blue-coast macaw.
Rainforests once covered 14% of the Earth's land surface, and now it is estimated that the percentage has gone down to 6%.
Despite the disastrous effects of deforestation, there are also positive human impacts on the Brazilian rainforest. Tourism has become wildly popular throughout the rainforest.
These tours increase support for the preservation of the forest and even convince some people to make donations to contribute to the cause.
That concludes this episode of Enchanted Ecosystems. So, in this video, you learned about the different levels of the food web and the different organisms in each one.
You saw how Charles Darwin's contributions, such as natural selection, are relevant in ecosystems today.
You experienced the different forms of symbiosis, predation, mutualism, parasitism, and commensalism in the different animals they affect.
You gain knowledge about the endangered, extinct, and invasive species of the rainforest.
You learned about the non-renewable and renewable resources in the rainforest and how they affect the ecosystem.
You learned how animals use self-defense, camouflage, and mimicry in order to adapt to their environment.
And you learned about the positive and negative human impacts on the ecosystem.
So please leave any comments, questions, or suggestions below and make sure to subscribe. Tune in next week for another episode of Enchanted
Ecosystems.